St. Joseph, Missouri. I'm Karen McClellan, and I'm a board member of the Gateway chapter of the Oregon-California Trails Association. Here to tell you about another adventure that happened from right here in St. Joe is Cindy Daffron, the Executive Director of the National Pony Express Museum.
Well, thank you, Karen. It's a real privilege. But to be standing here exactly where Johnny Fry and those will happen on April the 3rd, 1860, you know, not often in history can you stand there. You can talk about it, see it in the book, but right here, here's Johnny Fry. You know, it really happened. You know, it's a moment in time, but most importantly, why were they here? Well, because all those people traveled on that Oregon-California trail, got all the way out to California and Oregon, and guess what? There's no mail system. So all of a sudden they're like, how are we going to do this? Well, they tried different ways. I even heard they tried camels, and that didn't work at all. So then Russell, Majors, and Waddell said, you know, we've been taking people on that freighting line. We've been doing stuff in the military. An idea. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to use part of the trail, and we're going to get us some ponies, and we're going to make them be fast, and we're going to go those 2,000 miles. So as you can see, they set up different stations. There's about 180 along the way. But you know, there were about 7 to 15 miles. Well, that's a relay station. Why? Because that pony behind me, he can only go so fast, 10 to 12 miles an hour. And you know, Karen, at that point, man, I got to get me a new one, okay? Yeah. Well, then about 75 to 100, and I've been riding 14 hours. You know, I'm going to know that, okay? Well, at the end of those 14 hours, I'm going to stay at a home station. I'm going to stay there and wait because I've taken my mail. But I got it on this mochila right here, designed in St. Joseph, Missouri by Israel Landis, okay? Great thing, because 3 of my pockets, I'm going to put mail in, put about 20 pounds of mail in here. And my saddle, be about 125. Wow, guess what? I don't want over 155. That's going to be my speed. However, one pocket I'm going to leave open because for the first time ever, they're going to take messages and telegrams from where? From Washington, D.C. to all of the forts that are spread clear across those 2,000 miles. For the first time ever, information is being transferred. So if you stop and think about it, wow, you know, what was the fun thing about all this? Well, it was designed by people, and you know, there was money involved. Well, did they think they were going to make a lot of money? Well, along the way, a few things happened, but what do we know? They got the mail across the country. Well, you know, along the way, here we go. We got Johnny Fry, we got all these other writers. But man, we hear all these stories. You know, we've got stories about William Page. I've got stories about Billy Fisher. Did you know what happened to Billy Fisher?
No.
Why, Billy Fisher was out riding and his snow was hitting him in the face, and he said, I had my hat on and had my bandana over my ears like earmuffs, and all of a sudden, I'm so tired, I thought, I got to get off here. So he sits under a tree, and you know what happened? He fell fast asleep. Now, the story written to Mabel Loving, because Mabel Loving lived right here in St. Joe in 1900, she rode across the country and said, if you rode for the Pony Express, correspond with me. So here's the letter. We got it. You know what it says? Well, if it hadn't been for that jackrabbit that hopped on my lap, why, none of my family would be here today. And I can tell you that story goes one more generation because his great-grandson becomes an astronaut in 1986, okay? And we're standing in the hollow ground that's here, the first 55 feet that was ever set up as a museum. When? In 1993. Well, guess what? They said from 1959 to 1993, this is all you saw. Well, you know what they said? No, Walter Cronkite and I, well, you know what we're going to do? You let me take that letter up into space. Him and I are going to come back and we'll have chicken dinners, and we're going to actually raise $1.7 million to put on the second edition. And did they do that? Oh, yes, they did. Yeah, so I will tell you that Billy Fisher, he actually came. He's a trauma surgeon, but you know what the most important thing about it was? He came and he said, I'm going to tell you, you know, in the first grade, you know how children dream? Maybe you dreamed. Maybe you had a dream. I don't know. But here's what he said. You know, Cindy, if you ever heard about a word called deportment in school? Well, he said, I must have got a really bad one because it said, your parents must come see the teacher. So he's going, whatever, you know. However, when they get there, they go, your son, all he talks about is the sun, the moon, the stars. Why, you have to get him to quit because he's disturbing my class. You know what? You know when his parents come home and told him, he said, well, I'm going to do it. I don't really care what she says. And he goes, Well, that is what I'm going to do. What about if I just don't talk about it in front of her? Would that be okay? So I'm telling you, he said in 1986, the best message I ever had, he said, we're waddling like a duck up there to get on that spaceship. And I go, stop, 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 boys. You stay back here, okay? Stay back here. He said, I pull out my grade card and I said, I told you, first grade teacher, I was going to see the sun, moon, and the stars. You're going to see it with me. So let's have a great day, okay? Let's board the ship. Let's go. So you see, every adventure was just like the Pony Express. You never know where it's going to go, never what's going to happen. But along the way, what do? We make it work, just like the riders, okay? So, you know, they get there, they got to have horses. Well, I'm telling you what, I couldn't find a well. No, so, you know, I brought you a barrel of water. Well, you know what, I'm going to shake your hand and tell you, hey, have a really great day. I don't know when I'll see you again, but you know, guess what? I left you 3 horses, one's broke. Do you take care of breaking the other 2? And you know what? Wash your hands in scummy until I tell you, because guess what? You better use that fresh water if you want some fresh coffee, okay? All right. Now, you know what else we learned? How are you going to clean your gun out there on that old trail? What do you think? You going to clean your gun? Well, I can tell you how you better clean your gun. At the end of the day, you make one really strong cup of coffee, you open up your gun and pour the rest of it through. Well, you just took care of your gun. So, you see, they had to adapt. They didn't have all the ways that we have today, okay?
Wow.
So pretty interesting, right?
Very interesting.
Well, they had to pick their horses, you know, because you can't have the same horse going through all the terrain. I want a Mustang. Well, he can jump and he can hit a rock. He won't break his leg. Those Pintos, they're pretty much in the flatlands. They like to go fast, okay? But the Thoroughbred Morgan, they're a sturdy old horse and they can just keep pumping along that trail. And they're the ones that got that 10 to 12 miles an hour, picking up that speed, leaving from where? Right here in St. Joseph, Missouri. And you know, a lot of times kids are like, well, how in the world? You're standing here, how in the world did the mail go? I said, well, you know, they had to leave from here, go down, and they're going to go down to Francis Street. And you know what's going to find at Francis Street?
Last time I was there, it was a river.
Right, there's a river, but there's a ferry boat. So I'm going to get on there. I got to pay for me, got to pay for my horse, okay? And then we're going to go across the river, and you know what? The story even says this. The day of the thing, I was supposed to be here at 4:30, okay? No, I'm not here till almost 7:15, 7:30. You know why? Because when they got to Hannibal, they were so late. They issued orders, said, run wild to St. Joseph, Missouri. You know what that means? No more 30 miles an hour on the track. We're going to go 60, maybe 65, okay? You know what the man said when they got him there? He said, how was your trip? He goes, I don't know. I hit my head so many times. Where am I? They said, well, buddy, you're in St. Joe. He said, okay. Well, the next morning in the newspaper, you know what it says? Well, it's raining hogs all the way to St. Joseph, Missouri, because you see the little cattle catcher in front? Right. At 30, just kind of moves them out of the way. About 60 is blowing them in the air. So you see, that's how that story got told. But you know, I'm going to go down to the river, and I got my good meeting clothes on because I got my leather on. You know what that fringe is for, Karen? Why, when it rains and it's in there, it dries me off. It's just like a real raincoat, okay?
Awesome.
Yeah, you know, because I'm going to go into Kansas territory, okay? Yeah, so once I board and I go over there, I'm going to hit Kansas territory, and I'm really going to give it heck and get my way to where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Marysville, Kansas. That's where I'm going to go, okay? It'll be a great day, you know? Yeah. So along the way, what's going to happen across the country? Well, we're exchanging the mail, and that's where they say this mochila, you know, every time that I got a new horse, I got to get one. Then the next time, I'm going to give it to the next rider from the home station, but I'm going to wait at that home station till my mail comes to me from California, because where am I going to take it back to? I'm going to head my way back to St. Joseph, Missouri, right here, you know? So they're crossing the trail all the time at the same time. Now, let's talk about it. Back then, did they have envelopes? No. They had paper. So they made what looks like it. And so when they started out, they're like, wow. They were losing money. There was a little uprising that went on out there. The Indians kind of got upset. Guess what? The military went out. 6 weeks, shut it down. They lost $75,000. Is that a lot of money? Boy, in the time period, take that times 30. That's pretty much big in my mind in today's world. Yeah, so, you know, they're all talking about, wow, this is what happened. Well, you know, now guess what's going to happen? The timing of the country is kind of going to change. Things are going to happen. But you know what? I'm going to make me this envelope envelope, and it's kind of a letter envelope, so it weighs less. I can put more mail, that's the ingenious part, in here, I make more money, okay? So now instead of being the $5, they've dropped to $1, put it on there. However, you still got to buy a stamp. Can't forget the stamp, because that old stamp's got to be stuck on there. So you can kind of tell these are the things that went along, and you know, they were pretty ingenious, you know, the way that the riders dressed, the way that the things were across the country. But you know, I think one of the interesting things is when you stop and think about, there were people that walked that hallowed land, and here I am on a horse going right across that same history. Wow, today people are driving cars and buses and all kinds of stuff. What kind of history could that dirt tell us?
Oh,
well,
man.
It could tell a lot, couldn't it? Lots of stories. So, you know, I think along the way, also if you stop and think about it, what did we do here? We have a working well. That goes back to the original time of the Pony Express here, but it had been covered up. So they did 17 archaeological digs. Bingo, you can go back and pump water just like they did in 1858 to water the what? The 200 horses that were here at the Pikes Peak stables, because that was important. That's what this was.
Yes.
That Pony Express doesn't occupy it till 1860. Okay, so I think along the way, when I stop and think about all the stops that go along the way, then we think about the people, and all the time the government's still moving. Okay, we even hear that people in Europe are trying to figure out, because you know, if I got a business, they might be wondering what I'm doing. Well, there wasn't a lot of information coming from California until the Pony Express got this information all across those 2,000 miles.